think it's fair to say that we had looked at aspects of sustainability for quite some time. We were very early out with making decarbonisation ambitions in terms of a net zero by 2030. We'd done ratings and rankings, we had done reporting, but we had not done that much to really think about how our portfolio works. So we spent a lot of time also saying, who are we? Who do we want to be, but who are we? And this was our chance to then say, how does that play out when you look through the lens of environment, social, and governance?
Hello, everyone. This is Barbara Humpton, CEO of Siemens USA, and thanks for listening to The Optimistic Outlook. Let me set up today's conversation this way. Imagine your job was to manage both the people transformation and the sustainability transformation for a company with more than 300,000 employees operating in nearly every country in the world. A company that has needed its people to embrace a growth mindset and lifelong learning to serve rapidly changing markets. A company that in 2015 took on a leadership role in the effort to build a sustainable future when it became the first industrial company to commit to carbon neutrality by 2030. Now imagine that we could learn from this person about the linkage between being able to optimize people for change and accelerating sustainability goals. Well, this is the job of my colleague, Judith Wiese, and a preview of what we'll get to think about in this episode. Judith is our Chief People and Sustainability Officer globally. She's also a member of the managing board of Siemens and labor director. I caught up with Judith during her most recent visit to the U.S. Judith visited one of our manufacturing sites and met with teams there. I recorded this conversation with her at our research and development hub in Princeton, New Jersey. Judith and I talked about how technologies are transforming how we work. We explored what it takes to develop ecosystems of talent for industry, infrastructure, and transportation. And we also delved into a framework for sustainable business that Judith has pioneered, DEGREE, D-E-G-R-E-E, and how it's advanced our net zero ambitions. Take a listen. Judith, it's great to have you with us here at Princeton.
Thank you, Barbara.
I've had the privilege of interviewing Roland Busch, our global CEO, on the Optimistic Outlook podcast, and it's a really good fit because Siemens, I think, is naturally optimistic. But a lot of people do ask the question, what does optimism mean? And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on what it is to be optimistic.
Yeah, let me answer that at two different levels, maybe. If I answer that for myself, I think I've grown up with a feeling of, there's an English word called agency, right? So I think there's a confidence I have on most days anyway, that whatever I apply myself to, I can at least make progress on. So in that regard, I've always felt that, I have many means to make an impact in the way that I would want. If I then go back to where you started, which is Siemens, the world is at such an interesting inflection point at this moment in time. And the technologies that we have to offer are bang on what the world needs. We have been for 176 years, revolutionizing the backbone of societies around the world. In this country for 160, I understand. And we are still so relevant, and we will continue to be relevant in terms of what we have to offer, and that makes me immensely optimistic.
I'm so glad to hear that. And this really aligns well with my own thoughts about optimism, because a lot of people do ask me, is it about rose-colored glasses? And I say, absolutely not. I think the most effective optimists are realists. They're able to see the facts as they are, but it's that sense of agency. And I'm so glad you put it in that perspective, the sense that we have the tools we need. We have the team we need to address the challenges around us. And that gives us confidence. That leads to an optimistic outlook. Now, of course, not only are we dealing with a lot of change in the world, we're also driving a lot of change in the world. And I'd love to spend a little bit of time talking about what it means to bring people along on a change and transformation journey. Let's talk a little bit about, first of all, the state we're in, 300,000 people around the world, and our plans for the future.
Yeah, well, I think this is the million-dollar question that you're asking, Barbara, because when you look at a lot of the research, 2/3 of change initiatives fail because we focus on processes, on products, but we fail to think about how to take the people along. And for me, a lot of that comes with giving people confidence and direction. And it's interesting when you go to things like, who has trust these days in the world? And when you ask Edelman, who are very famous for their trust barometer, they will say media is losing out, government institutions are losing out, businesses are okay, your own employer is probably the one that you trust the most. And when I think about us at Siemens, we provide a North Star. We provide a vision for where we think that we can take the world with our technology. More than 90% helps customers make a positive impact also from a sustainability perspective, for instance. We put a vision out there. We put a path out there of how to get there. And I think we tell our people, we're vested in you, but we also need you to be vested in us. And a lot of that means learning. And making sure that we have the resiliency and the relevant skills that are needed for the future. And that requires an investment from both sides. But when that happens, I think we can give people, again, a feeling of agency. Where people's fears are greatest is where they feel powerless. And I think that is exactly what we're trying to do differently. We want to empower people. We want to give them a sense of direction. We want to show them that we're invested, and we want to give them the space to do learning. And then we need them to buy into that and do their part of the equation and the deal.
Well, let's bring that to life a little bit, because we've seen your organization within Siemens has actually rebuilt the learning framework that we're using. You're using AI, and it's teeing up digital learning for people everywhere so they can start their journey wherever they are and take it to the next level. Tell us a little bit about that framework.
Yeah, so luckily we started before COVID to take a lot of our learning into the digital space. And this is very different to how we've learned in the past. In the past, we would have signed up to, classroom training very often for several days. Today, learning is much more about, you do it as and when you need it, and you do it in smaller chunks. And learning is probably far more effective if you take, the impact and time equation that it takes to actually learn something that is really relevant for you. I think where the coolness about where AI comes in is, if we talk about the personalization of learning already today, AI is going to put that on steroids. So, in the future, you can log into the system and, the system's going to make suggestions and maybe even write a curriculum with the help of generative AI that is exactly for you, Barbara Hampton, and what you think you might want to do in the future.
It's so cool because we've got folks in our own organization here in the US who set a goal years ago to achieve some kind of role within the company, and to see people putting together their own path and then arriving at that. This is truly design your own adventure time.
Yeah, and that can be daunting at times as well. So I think we also have, the obligation to give a sense of direction. Now, what should I be learning? Where could I go for help? And then I think depending on how much you have been out of the learning space, particularly formal training for a while, I think it always helps to be a bit nudged. Somebody who encourages you, somebody who gives you the safety of learning and maybe making a few mistakes. But that's at the end of the day what we mean with this famous word of growth mindset. If you go back to the very concept of what it means, it says, the cards have been dealt with, I can change. I just need to apply myself. Back to agency. So it's about possibility. It's about who we can become, and to what extent companies like ours can support our people on that journey. And they benefit and we benefit. I think people become ever more employable. And we have the big chance to be much more competitive going forward.
Well, you actually did the math for us. I remember, maybe it's been 2 years now, where the big question was, with the amount of change that's going on, does it make sense to actually switch out the workforce? Let some people go, retire, depart, and then hire new. and skill them up on the things that we need to know inside Siemens. And you showed us a quite different business case.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, the business case, if you really look at the hard numbers, is slightly different country by country. But think about, all of those countries, all of Europe, but now also China, that has a demographic challenge. There are not that many people out there that you can hire, and the ones that are there are heavily contested by others as well, because both skilled labor as well as software developers or AI experts are highly sought after by so many. Investing in the workforce that we have, regardless of age, is a huge advantage for both sides. And in a market like the one here in the US, where growth is the name of the game, we should be vested in the people that we have and make sure that we take them on the journey with us whilst we're recruiting and whilst we're probably also making technology our best friend. So where we can automate, where we can get AI to help us with productivity, we will leverage that as well. But there really is a hard, euro or dollar business case for really investing into the up and reskilling of our people. And just last year, we invested 416 million euros into the learning of our people.
With the recognition, that's a great investment as opposed to an expense. What you've brought to the role is a data-driven approach, so that, first of all, we're grounded in facts. And I think the brilliance of putting people and organization and sustainability together is that we are naturally a company that focuses in on the products that are being developed. And then when you think about a focused technology company, what you realize is that there is this thread that runs through all of these businesses. All of these businesses operate where the real and the digital world are coming together. We're experts in bringing new digital tools to areas of economies that have been big industrial, they have been old-fashioned businesses. And now all of a sudden, they are the coolest tech sector in the world. And so what you've helped us do is to recognize that without changing organization structures, without changing P&L reporting, there are simply some things we can see now. And because we can see it, we can manage it. Just knowing the numbers is a great place to start. So Judith, you helped us introduce the degree framework, our sustainability framework that guides our business. Our work is sustainable. Our work is sustainability. And degree. So I just want to spend a moment and talk through degree, its elements, and mainly for our audience to recognize that a lot of companies focus on decarbonization. Many, many companies focus on people issues, et cetera. Here in one place, you've brought together the key factors for the long-term health of this business.
I think it's fair to say that we had looked at aspects of sustainability for quite some time. We were very early out with making decarbonization ambitions in terms of a net zero by 2030 and longer term 2050. We'd done ratings and rankings. We had done reporting, but we had not done that much to really think about how our portfolio works. I was lucky in that there was a unique opportunity when I joined in October 2020, where the five of us that sit on the board, I think virtually all had new roles. So we spent a lot of time also saying, who are we? Who do we want to be? But who are we? And if you think about us, for 176 years, we have transformed the everyday. And this was our chance to then say, how does that play out when you look through the lens of environment, social, and governance? So degree stands for decarbonization. Of course, that has got to be part and parcel of it. Ethics and governance. Resource efficiency, a really important one. We'll come on to this one because I think circularity is the big opportunity and the big nut to crack. And then the last two E's are squarely in the people area, because it's equity in terms of DEI, and then employability. And then we're back to skilling and making sure that people are resilient and relevant for the future. But it is working very well in terms of educating our customers what we can do for them. It's very important with our own people, because it's a source of pride for them, people that we want to attract to come work for Siemens, for our suppliers. And we've given ourselves ambitions and KPIs in each of these areas. And one of the learnings that I had coming to Siemens is, you have to work hard on getting alignment on KPIs. But once you have that, magic happens, because we're now in the privileged position that, with our 2025 targets that we set, we're at the verge of reaching all of them, or have already reached them already. And so we're now going into the next iteration of degree as we speak, to make sure that we throw the stone further for 2030 plus.
I have the privilege of being on the Global Sustainability Board, and I'll never forget the briefing where you showed us not only have we set these targets for ourselves, not only are we measuring them in a very concrete way, we're auditing. And I can't tell you how proud I am of the fact that it's yes, committing to measure, it's getting that alignment first, but then being able to stand tall, holding ourselves accountable for achieving, and of course then, as you say, this incredible organization yields results. And so the real question these days is, if you have that capacity, right? If you have the capability to address some of the world's biggest challenges, climate change, urbanization, the aging demographics of people everywhere, this ever more global supply chain and the digitalization of everything. And you've got this 300,000 people. How do you make decisions every day about where to devote the resources? And so I'd love to just take us inside what happens in a strategy discussion in terms of how do we allocate resources in order to address the potential that's ahead of us.
Let me come back to the people. I think, as always, there needs to be a common language that you need to speak around a certain subject. So that is also true for sustainability. So we invested in a base camp that was literally for everybody, in terms of getting everybody educated on some of the core concepts of sustainability, scopes, what does that mean? Circularity, what does that mean? And at the same time, we started to develop a 2-day training program for our top 200 leaders, because we wanted to get them all on the same page in terms of some of the frameworks, but then also to immediately start thinking, how does that inform strategy going forward? How does that actually impact portfolio? What do I need to do with the products that I carry in my business unit? And what else do I need to make sure that I act as a multiplier on? So that was hugely important for us as a starting point. And in that regard, it's actually become easier because you have more people now thinking about sustainability as a dimension of their work, as they would do with cost and efficiency at a different level. So I think that does the trick. You move it from something that seemingly sits on the side into something that is squarely part of your day-to-day decision making. And when I go around factories or sites now, people show me the degree framework and how it relates to them and the progress that they're making. But it has also unlocked a few things that would otherwise be harder to unlock in a business where P&Ls are distributed. And I'll give you one example of our own commitments on decarbonization. We invested another 650 million as a board to accelerate that in terms of physical reduction in our own operations. And of course, that has enabled our real estate group to now work with the various countries and businesses to help with that.
And it's interesting because what you've done for Siemens globally with investment is the same thing we're seeing in the marketplace in the US. The US federal government has said,
Voila.
I'm going to prioritize this infrastructure expansion and the electric grid, getting more renewables on, et cetera. And that sends a signal to the market. And you've done exactly that with the creators, the engineers and designers within the Siemens Corporation who are envisioning the products of the future.
Just the last few years, I think the world has gone and business leaders have gone from making big declarations about what's going to happen in many years' time to really working that backwards in terms of milestones. And as we get into the how are we going to do things, opportunities and certain challenges arise. And what you see now is that more and more companies take their responsibilities and we're able to help. But we see also more and more industries finding each other. Take the chemical industry. They have something that they call Together for Sustainability. We're helping with a product like Seagreen because they're trying to understand how they can also exchange data where that is relevant to track things like actual product carbon footprint. And they need a technological solution to do that in a way that is safe.
We'll provide a link to Seagreen in our notes, a blockchain-enabled tool that will actually help players in the supply chain anonymize data, but giving insight and power to control the components.
Exactly. You see the same happening with automotive. If you think circularity, there's entire industries now having to rethink how they do things. I've been at a meeting with sustainability officers where two big beverage companies are now talking together about how can they help each other understand what can be done from a water management perspective. So you are trying. You are seeing companies that might have been competitors on most days trying to find ways of actually solving for the world in a way that doesn't raise any antitrust alarms, of course, but so therefore we can't solve for it alone. We need to take our own responsibilities. But I think we are one of those few players that have so much enabling technology that we can help different industries try and do the right thing.
It's amazing. And in this world, on these topics, there is no win-lose. There's only win-win.
Exactly.
Or lose-lose.
Or lose-lose.
So Here we are. So with all of this work that the corporation is taking on when it has to do with sustainability, Siemens isn't going to do all of this alone. Well, I've been thinking a lot, too, then about the ecosystems of talent. Because we're going to have to build the workforce of the future. We have a lot to offer to help labor unions educate their membership or to reach community colleges. And where are you seeing the ecosystems of talent right now that are going to, and how should we be working differently within those ecosystems?
If you focus on skills that are needed, I think there is ways of making sure that we not only as we talked about before, upskill and potentially even reskill our own people, but I think we can also pave a much clearer way for people who are in education today, high school, colleges, to your point, to really help them understand what are the skills of the future and what are the skills that are basically your entry ticket into organizations like ours. And I see us here in the United States, but it's the same in India or Germany. I see us quite engaged in helping students understand what it is that is needed in terms of roles of the future and skills of the future, and help to build that bridge that lands you in a role. And we often do that not just to recruit for ourselves, but also do that for others. We also see things like Tech for Sustainability, where our head of technology initiated, where our businesses come with certain problems they want to solve for, and we really carry that into universities, to startups, to anybody who wants to engage really, and therefore pair something that we are interested in as a business with talent that may or may not ever end up sitting in our organization. There is also an interesting dynamic happening with suppliers and customers. A lot of our customers are now saying, can you also help with our workforce? Do you have products, knowledge as a service, that go beyond maybe a product school for a certain box or item to, can you really help us train our workforce at a larger scale? We see suppliers saying, sustainability, help us understand that, because, all you big companies, you've got it figured out, but we're small or medium sized. What do we need to know? What do we need to learn? And I think we have a role to play here as well. And so, sharing knowledge that is relevant, and strengthening the ecosystem that we do business with as much as the talent ecosystem. I think the lines of that will blur more and more going forward.
Judith, what do you think about the power of apprenticeships? I know you're traveling the world, and of course, the German apprenticeship model is very strong. Are you seeing apprenticeships being used successfully elsewhere?
Yeah, it's very interesting that with a skills-first approach that is advocating by many now, companies as much as academia, there's almost been a renaissance of the German apprentice model, because it is so practical or so close to what businesses really need. So bringing together learning and working is, I think, the magic of an apprentice program. And of course, we do that in Germany, but I've seen that now applied in India. I see it applied here in the United States, and there is more and more in Latin America as well. So I see more and more governments also being really interested in this. So sometimes I get to meet ambassadors or their representatives, and they're very interested in what the magic sauce is. And it's actually relatively simple. It is, again, about skill building very close to the place of application.
Yes.
Rather than just sitting, theoretically in a classroom and learning about it.
And I loved something I learned when I visited the Siemens Apprenticeship Academy in Berlin. The directors made the comment to me about the motto of no first step without a next step. And I'm enchanted by the idea that all you have to do is get started and then figure out. We work with Wake Tech Community College, and the community college there has a great motto, ladder up. All we want to do is get people on that first rung and then help them climb the rungs on their own personal ladder. So I think our conversation has really, brought us full circle with the concept that this all begins and ends with people. It's people who are inventing the future. It's people who are going to be behind deploying technology. I love to ask every guest about the future for their optimistic outlook. You've talked to us about throwing the stone a little further out. So you've tossed that stone a little further out. What are your visions for what Siemens is capable of in the future horizon?
Yeah, I think you already mentioned, that we're able to combine the real and the digital worlds like nobody else. Think in industrial metaverse. Yeah, that is one of the coolest visions I think we have, and we're in the process of making that happen. We can claim that space like no other can, with partners that we have, like an NVIDIA or a Microsoft, to really bring to life in the virtual world everything that's going to be created before we even touch a thing in the real world. But once that is done, there will be hopefully very positive impact in the world that you and I can touch and see. So that is one of the things that I get really excited about in terms of the proposition, the technology proposition that we have as a company. And then I think people will be much more agents of their lives in so many regards. I think we're going to see a decade and an age of empowerment like we haven't seen, I don't know whether ever, but people will be much more in the driver's seat of their lives, and they will have a chance to integrate choices about their lives in a different way. And they will hopefully have much more agency going forward if they apply themselves. And I think we're here to support that, certainly for our people, but also for our customers.
Well, I want to live in that world, and it is such a privilege to have you with us on the Optimistic Outlook podcast. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning into this conversation with Judith. I'll go back to the connection Judith made between optimism and agency, or acting confidently to solve problems. Judith's dual focus on driving transformation with people and sustainability brings with it a powerful perspective about the possibilities for using technology to shape a better tomorrow. On one hand, we need to prepare people and empower them to use technologies to their full potential. On the other hand, the technologies themselves empower people to accomplish more than previous generations could have ever dreamed up. What can't we achieve with optimism plus agency plus technology with purpose? So please go to show notes for more information on the topics we've discussed. Head over to my LinkedIn page to send me questions, ideas, and feedback, and subscribe to the Optimistic Outlook newsletter, or email us at optimist.us@siemens.com. See you next time. Please follow us on social media and on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you for tuning in.